All right, everyone. We'll start on time, we'll have plenty of interesting questions and answers and information about AI. But first, make sure that you're in the right room. This is about implication of artificial intelligence. So hopefully. You're at the right spot. Today, I really very grateful to have our panelists here to talk about AI and the nexus of AI with cybersecurity. And before we start our conversation, I just have some announcement to make. One is that the session is on the record. And that second, please silence your phones so we don't disturb each other. And today we have 6 panelists, and I hope that I can get the conversation started, especially on AI. This is the first panel for really over the last 7-8 years at this conference to discuss deeply about the implication of AI, machine learning, and the nexus to cybersecurity. We have our esteemed panelists here today, Omar, Fred, Meeri, Andrew, Stoney, and Weidi, and we'll have very different perspective on how we think about AI, its implication to cybersecurity, as well as to national security, and where do we go from here? And basically, what are the questions and areas that we need to further discuss as we move forward? I'll try to keep this simple. We will have our panelists roughly 5 minutes to discuss, some key points, and then we'll have some key questions and answers, and hopefully that you join us in our Q&A session, in the last 30 or so minutes. Before we start, this is quite an interesting topic, and then is close and dear to my heart regarding this nexus of AI and cybersecurity. Just to kind of ground us in the fundamentals, we want to really discuss about the application of AI machine learning to cybersecurity and cyber operations. So that's one part of that. But another part of the story as well is the security of AI and machine learning. We are not really doing that well in that area. We're actually not doing a lot, actually, in that area. So hopefully our cybersecurity community can actually take on some of that work to secure training models, training data, so on and so forth, so that we don't have to deal with a security of AI system 5 or 10 years down the road. So let's start today. So with that, I want to have each of our panelists, discuss the key point, and we'll just go down the line here. So.
Thank you very much for that introduction. It's an absolute pleasure being with you all here today on this panel, talking about one of the most important issues that underlines any development when it comes to artificial intelligence and really shapes the future of this technology. We hear a lot of discussions talking about artificial intelligence and its promise, talking about the job loss implication or probably the societal implication of artificial intelligence, but not many discussions on the fundamental security issues that might come out or arise because of AI. We've seen also, I think, a very interesting evolution of this technology and the uses of this technology really get driven into the physical world and impact us in a way that is not purely digital. So what we've seen around the world with regards to a breach of privacy, what we've seen with regards to meddling in certain political issues, really shows that it is important for us to ensure that these technologies are secure and that we do derive when it comes to developing a more secure mechanism when it comes to using these systems or using the data that goes within these systems. I represent an interesting player, I would say globally, when it comes to artificial intelligence. I'm the Minister of State for Artificial Intelligence from the United Arab Emirates. The UAE is a relatively small country that is not known to be a leader in AI, but we have great ambitions to become the leader in AI by the year 2031. What makes us uniquely situated in the AI space is some of the advantages that we've had because of the agile and very demanding leadership that we have when it comes to development, specifically in the technology realm. So we have gone through a lot of transformation, whether it be the M-government transformation, the smart government transformation, and now the AI transformation that we're going through. So we don't have the legacy systems that most other countries have when it comes to deploying AI or actually, investing that heavily in making sure that these systems are AI capable or can actually accept AI within their government agencies. We also have 200 nationalities. So our data set in the UAE is very unique because it truly is global. These 200 nationalities come from all ethnicities, all backgrounds, and we've seen a lot of interest from different countries to access this data and to work with us on taking advantage of the global nature of the UAE. And then finally, the biggest, I think, downside in this journey is the fact that we are importers of technology. To date, we are not exporters or we are not creators of these technologies. So we understand that there are certain issues that come with importing technology, and these are things that we need to address collectively, I think, with other partners. And we're taking a very collective and collaborative approach when it comes to AI. The challenge with importing AI solutions from anywhere on Earth is the issue of having a backdoor, being able to access certain sensitive data sets, understanding certain trends that might impact the sovereignty or the security of a nation. And we're seeing a lot of debate today on certain countries taking a very defensive approach towards using certain solutions from certain geographies. And this, I think, is just going to keep on increasing until we come to an understanding of what the future of this technology is going to be. We're also seeing a lot of issues being derived because of the AI transformation that are leading to a lot of vocal voices from around the world talking about governance of the technology, talking about the cybersecurity element. And that is only going to increase since today, unfortunately, the investments that go into data collection are much higher than the investments that go towards data protection, and specifically the cybersecurity component. So most of the players in this space, whether it's AI, whether it's data collection, are private sector players. And the incentive with the private sector is how much profit we can generate or how much we can make out of the data that we have or the systems that we are deploying. The challenge with that notion is sometimes the financial motivation that certain companies have might contradict the implications or might contradict the impact that it might have negatively on governments. So in a sense, if governments don't intervene and actually enforce some sort of cybersecurity requirement, there are going to be big implications on the government or on citizens in the long run. So I think that one of the things that we need as a key takeaway from this session and as well any future discussions is how can we ensure that whatever mechanism is being used to collect data, whatever mechanism is being used to understand citizen habits or citizen personalities, I think moving forward, need to be governed and need to be protected in a way that do not create negative impact in the long term. And I would like to conclude by saying that for us to ensure that there's a better future with AI, we need to develop this technology responsibly. And I think if you look at every single development, whether it was industrial development or urban development in the past, the whole notion was built on a single player trying to develop for a single gain. So my country is going to develop its industry or its urban development for its own benefit. Today, the impact of that is climate change, that all of us need to face together. All countries either combat together or no country can solve on its own. With AI, if we do not build it responsibly, if we do not work together when it comes to actually deploying this in a responsible manner, we might face an impact that is very similar to climate change. And that's why it's important to have a collaborative approach, to work together in the space, and to ensure that we understand the goods and the bads that might come out of it.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. So I'd like to thank the Atlantic Council, Catherine and Vinh for inviting me to be here. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm also pleased to be here for one other reason. No PowerPoint slides are allowed. So as a technical guy, normally I spend a lot of time creating PowerPoint slides, showing all kinds of diagrams and so forth. But so No PowerPoint slides, and you'll probably thank me for that as well. Okay, so AI is over 60 years old. It's not as old as biology or chemistry or physics or math, but it is pretty old. It's sort of getting ready to retire. It's been around a long time. But for about the past 10 years, there's a specific area of artificial intelligence that is just sort of sucking all the oxygen out of the room. So specifically machine learning and even a subset of that called artificial neural networks for about the past 10 years is what people largely equate with artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is an extremely broad field. Artificial neural networks are a very small part of it, though everybody thinks artificial neural networks are artificial intelligence. Okay. People are saying very extreme things about these artificial neural networks. So they're saying things like, it's the most disruptive technology of all time, sort of comparable to fire and electricity. It's also being said that it's possibly the worst event in civilization, and it could spell the end of the human race. So the truth is probably somewhere in between, but it's just attracting a huge amount of global attention, and for good reason. Okay, so why so much attention in this fairly narrow area of artificial intelligence? So these neural networks have done a stupendous job at a range of perceptual tasks. So things like speech recognition, image recognition, language translation, a bunch of sort of surface level perceptual tasks. The technology is stupendous. So prior to artificial neural networks, performance on these sorts of things was okay, but with the advent of these neural networks, the performance is just skyrocketed, basically matching human performance, human expert performance, and in some cases actually exceeding human performance. So it's a big deal, and it is the result of these, specifically these artificial neural networks. Artificial neural networks also represent a fundamental change in computer science and in software, and the reason is as follows. So back, some years ago, when some of us learned how to program computers, probably some of you know how to program computers. Basically, the human being was a micromanager. So we would write instructions to the computer, if this, then do this, if that, then do that. And so we basically wrote these instructions, and the computer slavishly represented our programs. And so we were basically like this micromanager looking over this machine, do what I say, go left, go right, and the machine has no other choice. With machine learning and these artificial neural networks, the human takes on a completely different role. The human being, rather than being a micromanager, is now a teacher. And so I basically, consider the task of if I have to distinguish between a malignant tumor or a benign tumor, they look sort of similar. Or if I have to distinguish between a bobcat and a lynx, or between a porpoise and a dolphin, previously I would have to describe what that looks like in some programming language, and I would write down the difference. It would be really hard to do it. With these artificial neural networks, all I have to do now is show it pictures. I show it pictures of a bobcat and pictures of a lynx, dolphin, porpoise, benign tumor, malignant tumor, and the machine basically figures it out. And we're now to the point where we've just made a fundamental change. The machine learns on its own. The human being doesn't sit there and program it. It learns from all these images, and the number of domains in which it can learn is a big deal. So it's a fundamental difference. So the future of programming is going to change. The way we teach students about computer science in the future will change as a result. They don't need to be micromanagers anymore. They need to be teachers. Now, with that said, basically, we've seen the advent of three fundamental things. So we've seen the advent of massive amounts of data, and just go on the web and you can find all kinds of pictures and sounds and all sorts of things. So there's just a huge amount of data. We now have faster processors, and then combined with these artificial neural networks, along with a bunch of algorithms that went on top of that, we have these stunning results. And they really are the result of about the past 10 years of these technological advances. Now, it turns out that a form of these neural networks are called deep neural networks. They're very complex. So basically, these data inputs going in on one side, the outputs come in on the other, and then there's just a whole bunch of stuff in the middle. It's the so-called black box. And just like human beings, these black boxes can be fooled. So we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the result of these neural networks is stunning accuracy, but at the same time, due to their complexity, they can be fooled. The way in which they can be fooled leads to security problems, which I think is one of the main purposes of this conversation. So I'll leave more to that. But as more AI-enabled software becomes available, we will increase the size of the attack surface, right? So you've got AI-enabled software on your laptops, on your phones. We all do. It's working very well. There's going to be more of it. This new software is just different. It'll have new failure modes and so forth. And so we have to be very vigilant about making sure that with the growth of this particular type of software, we also don't grow the attack surface too badly. Okay, so I'll stop for now.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. And actually, for me, this is a very special sort of like context to be in, because I'm mostly in the AI ethics related discussions, and like now being in a cybersecurity conference and with wonderful experts on this domain, it's like it makes me really humble and also like. Underlies the theme that it has been bubbling under, that like AI ethics and cybersecurity are strongly coming together, and we need to more discuss about like how do we approach these together between these communities. So maybe just a few points from my perspective, and I'm like heavily also drawing from being having been like closely part of the Finnish national AI program. We were actually published our strategy already in 2017, and like and just like very recently, a few weeks ago, like came up with the report on that one, and I've been leading the ethics working group on that work. And I must say that although Finland was really early in like defining strategy for AI, to be really honest, like these topics, cybersecurity and the ethics, were the two ones that we didn't really see coming that largely on table at the moment when we first published our national AI strategy. So there were three themes that we like highlighted or added to the strategy more strongly. Just like 1 year ago or so, and these two themes, both the like how do we prepare for the new risks and new emerging cybersecurity risks, as well as how do we steer the AI era, or like path to algorithmic age in a way that it's human centric and enforces or builds trust among the society and the citizens. So it's we're learning here, and I have a feeling collaborating heavily with the organizations who want to take forwards AI innovation, and governmental organizations taking forwards AI innovations. I feel that like this year's question is how do we? This is important. Like how do we act on it? So the time is here, and the questions are on table with organizations today already. So the timing is the first. Like it's hugely important to act and find ways of acting on these right now and at this point of time. This is not a future question. And then the sort of like a second point that really interests me is that I briefly already touched upon, like how do this like cybersecurity and the ethics sort of like questions and communities come together. Basically, the fact is that as we are taking AI into use in a wide scale in our public sector, like different areas there in the health sector, defense, transportation, and basically our societies are increasingly driven by the decisions done by these automated decision-making systems and AI systems. So it's not only about looking at the risks coming from outside or like cautiously malicious activities towards the infrastructure, but also like how do we there are unintentional impacts on these systems in the society, and those are the specifically the ones which are heavily in discussion in media right now and of the concern of the wide society. So there are new types of risks related to these systems, and I hope that we truly find together between these communities ways to act on these. Yeah, and maybe the third one is really we have been seeing like whole last year there has been lots of different initiatives from both the nations as well as the sort of different kind of like organizations here, standardization organizations and UN and so forth, OECD, acting on like defining ethics principles and like stating out the values that are important for us in this area. So and the like most recently EU Commission high-level expert group on AI came up with their own guidelines for trustworthy AI. So lots of good work done on and quite good consensus about like what is important, what are the values and principles we should guard in this space. And now I really feel that we need to take put lots of effort and investments into how do we take these into practice? What does it mean in practice? And that means looking at like sector specifically, what are the codes of conducts? Like what is important? Like how do we basically implement the requirements, for example, in the health sector or different governmental services, and sort of like coming up with shared understanding about how do we act on these questions. So that's my third point, and maybe to conclude this, what is also major risk we need to acknowledge while trying to come up with ways to govern smartly this area. Is that we need to find ways to do that in a way that it still allows innovation, AI innovation to flourish, and that's something that is not trivial question how to do it in practice, because we don't want to stop the good development, the opportunities that we all have in using and applying AI in different sectors of our society. So governing AI in a smart way. That's the question of this year, in my opinion.
Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew Price. I'm the head of the Science and Innovation team at the British Embassy here in Washington, and I'm normally speaking to audiences, more technical, more academic audiences about AI, so I'm delighted to have been invited along here to address what I think is a great topic, and dare I say a slightly more smartly dressed group of people to speak to than some of the academic audiences. No offence to any academics in the room, of course. What I wanted to do was just make a few very quick points about the UK's approach to AI from an economic and social benefit point of view, which hopefully will bring a slightly different perspective to the panel, where I'm sure in discussion we'll get into some of the knottier issues around where AI and machine learning bleed into cybersecurity. So Like many countries, the UK has an AI strategy. It sounds like, Meeri, that Finland beat us to it. Ours was in April 2018 when we published our strategy. And it's very deliberately a cross-industry, academia and government strategy to develop the UK's AI ambitions. And we've put about $1.3 billion, that's public and private investment, behind it. What are we focused on in this strategy? Five key areas. One is about having the right leadership across government, industry and academia to help our AI sector grow and flourish. Secondly, it's about raising the technical skills, the computer science skills and the AI skills required for the growth of this technology, but also the wider societal skills for the adoption and for working with AI technology in future. Thirdly, improving access to data, and making sure that the people who have the technology have the ability to access training data, systems, approaches to develop their algorithms, their technologies. Fourthly, supporting individual sectors to adopt AI, and I think that's a really critical issue. The way AI develops in healthcare will be totally different from the way AI develops in criminal justice, will be totally different from the way we see AI being used when we log on to any current, consumer retail portal and do our no names in particular, but do our shopping or do our media consuming. And then lastly, in the UK, we've been trying to develop these very kind of signature, ambitious missions to get, in some ways, to get the kind of public to see the value and the real benefit of AI. So we're trying to develop missions around using AI to help with the early diagnosis of cancer, things that are going to capture the public imagination. And I think that's a key theme about public trust and public buy-in to AI and its growth. We've also set up some new kind of government infrastructure to support the strategy. We've got a dedicated office of AI, which is cross-government, sits across two of our departments, and that the job of that office is to effectively to implement the strategy, working with industry and academia. We've also set up something called the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation, which we think is a world first. I'm happy for somebody to tell me that that's not true. And that body is about striking the right balance between harnessing the innovation and the power of AI and machine learning, whilst also being conscious of the ethical, the safety, and some of the broader considerations around AI. Just a little bit more on that centre. It's not a regulatory body, and some people think that what the UK has done is kind of establish a new strategy, establish a new body, and immediately decide to regulate on AI. That is absolutely not the case. This is an advisory body that's about providing recommendations to government on how AI can flourish, whilst also recognising some of the risks. Three principles I drew out from the strategy for the centre, just to highlight the overall ethos. It's about encouraging the benefits of innovation and data use and AI by promoting frameworks to make the right evaluation between opportunity and risk. And then it's about applying generally accepted public values and principles when considering the risk of harm. But thirdly, highlighting where society is yet to develop relevant, generally accepted values and principles. And I think those 2 points are really important because, sometimes in the debate about AI, it's as if this is the first time we've come across a new and emerging technology which is disrupting things and will continue to do so. We have a set of norms, we have a set of values, we have a set of principles which society has held for a long time that we apply to different cases, and that should also be true with AI. So it's important not to rush to judgment and rush to feel there is a need for new measures or new approaches where actually we've dealt with some of these challenges before. Just quickly, we're also on two of the kind of hot button issues on AI. The centre is also going to do a review looking at online targeting, so investigating how data is used to shape people's online environments via targeting, personalisation. And then secondly, a review on bias, which is looking at algorithmic bias in various sectors. We haven't decided the sectors yet, but they're likely to be the ones where bias is going to lead to a particularly negative outcome. So if you look at criminal justice, if you look at financial services, recruitment, these are obvious areas where we've already seen examples where bias built into the technology is having an impact or has caused concerns. So I'll finish there, but just three quick points in conclusion. I think a lot of countries, the UK included, have taken pretty strong steps to try and establish a national strategy on AI. we're pretty committed to a positive growth economic agenda around the benefits of AI, but also thinking hard about some of the risks. And I think that is the issue, is how you strike that balance. I think to Meeri's point, that's going to be a key debate for the year ahead. Secondly, I'd say you can't really do this without the trust and confidence from the public. So we have to get the approach on ethics and public engagement right in order to allow the technology to flourish. And then the last thing I'd just say is international engagement is crucial. I was talking to my colleague earlier about the language around AI is of an arms race. Everybody trying to outcompete each other, and maybe there's some truth in that. I personally don't think it's the most helpful analogy for this, but the technology is not constrained by borders. So having a conversation about an arms race kind of misses the point for me a little bit. So we need to work together. We need to work together to collaborate on research and development. We need to work together to establish the right principles for development of the technology. And we need to think together about the wider impact of this exciting technology on society. And I'll stop there.
Good afternoon. Stoney Trent. I'm with the Department of Defense Joint Artificial Intelligence Center. I'm an Army cyber warfare officer, and have been really blessed to have the opportunity to be involved with the stand-up of a startup in the Defense Department. This is not an organization that's used to startups. It's usually not conducive to startups. And this type of startup, the Joint AI Center, is unlike any other startup. It's not going to be, garage located in high fructose corn syrup fueled, because it has to be able to change the world's largest bureaucracy. From the beginning, we're standing up a multiple business unit operation that has to be able to accelerate the delivery of AI across all of our warfighting and business functions. So it's really not a place for the weak of heart and folks that just want a lot of structure and sort of predictability. And it's just been a wonderful opportunity. So I appreciate the opportunity to kind of share a few insights from our first few months. It was established at the end of June last year, and we're just now hiring our first folks. If you're interested in a job, see me after. As I mentioned, our mission is to accelerate the delivery, principally of human-centered AI. Now, this is sort of lost on most AI engineers, the humans that have to use the AI that they're so enamored with. We're going to do that. We're doing that now by establishing the Defense Department's AI Center of Excellence. This is a little bit of a unique twist on a center of excellence. Most centers of excellence are sort of a schoolhouse with sort of a knowledge repositories and sort of graybeard experts that can espouse philosophy. We'll have some of that, but we'll also achieve excellence by doing. Our mission is to reduce both non-technology barriers as well as technology barriers to AI adoption. And we found that even in our experience, but even before staying at the AI Center, that the non-technology barriers are some of the largest. It's not training an algorithm. That's actually some of the easiest element to an AI implementation is doing some training. It's much harder to contend with policy barriers, with HR barriers, with understanding user groups, et cetera. And I'll kind of elaborate a little bit on that really briefly. But in order to change the Defense Department, again, world's largest bureaucracy, the JAIC has to be, the Joint AI Center, has to be a part of the Defense Department enough to change it. But we also believe that we have to be apart from it enough to be a part of the nation's technology sector. And this is a really unique place. It's that suddenly we can't rely on the normal transactions between government and the tech sector of I bring bags of dollars and you give me products and services. I have to be able to exchange talent and insights with you, best practices, data. We have to be able to exchange things that aren't normally exchanged in order to accelerate the delivery of AI. I like to say that with this mission, we are going to Mars, but we're going to do it one use case at a time. One of the biggest barrier to getting started on AI is getting started on AI. And you just have to, admit that you're not going to immediately solve the world's largest problems. You're not going to be able to follow some deliberate requirements process where you envision all of your gaps, and then you're going to come up with a roadmap of 20-year technology development to realize an obsolete tool at the end. You have to get started by decomposing big problems into smaller problems, and then start tackling them one at a time, one use case at a time. And this is the way that the JAIC is standing up in the Defense Department. We've started 3 what we call mission initiatives, national mission initiatives, one on predictive maintenance, another on humanitarian assistance, and another on cyberspace. Those are really large areas for the Defense Department, but they're not our biggest problems. Within those big problem areas, we're not necessarily starting on the biggest problems in those areas even. We're starting on particular use cases, particular platforms, particular data sets with specific user groups, and we're attempting to apply AI to resolve their problems in a 1 to 2 year time period. We're executing, typical commercial product delivery model of 6-month sprints that deliver prototypes to operational user groups. In this case, we're different from our research and development organizations that many of you may have a lot of experience with and interactions with. We're going to rely on our research and engineering partners, both in commercial as well as government labs, to deliver new technologies and deliver expertise. But then we'll bridge that gap between research and practice with our prototyping model. So I wanted to share with you what I consider sort of 6+1 big barriers to AI implementations. It's hard to imagine that they'll be reduced in a year or 2 years. They're very large problems, and in some ways, you have to acknowledge that because they may be irreducible, we'll have to adopt processes that just allow you to navigate them. The first order problem with AI implementations is data. And this is assuming that you're using machine learning approaches, but identifying knowledge bases for non-machine learning approaches is equally important. But I'll talk about data because it's as Fred mentioned earlier, it's particularly important for machine learning approaches. It's in data, we have to be able to not only collect it. I liked your comment earlier, Omar, about collection investments far surpassing protection investments. We have to be able to collect data, but we also have to curate it and categorize it. I have to understand what I'm actually, what do I actually have, and how might that compare with a production environment? How congruent are my training sets with my production environment sets? Second order problem is problem scoping. That we've experienced this even in the last most recent 6-month period, where you'll identify a data set and you'll hypothesize problems that can be reduced with AI, but then you'll spend several months recognizing that you really have no ability to solve that problem that you thought you could solve with that data. And so you have to go back to the drawing board with the operators, the practitioners that are responsible for using the technology in the end, and redefine what it is that you're able to reduce with AI. You're not going to solve all problems with AI. Not all problems should be solved with AI, and that's the first thing that you have to recognize is some humble pie. The problem scoping is not just AI engineering. It's an interdisciplinary effort. It requires human factors engineers. It requires user experience designers. It requires AI engineers. It will always require data scientists and software developers, but it can't only include them. The AI implementations that only include those types of experts are bound to fail in pretty predictable but surprising to the technologists ways. The third barrier is policy. We recognize this in every area of military operations, and we see this in commercial implementations as well. Your policy, regulatory barriers to sharing data, identifying data, collecting data, all are going to get in the way of AI implementations. Fourth barrier is a very minimalized. It's sort of trivialized in at least our observations in commercial spaces, and that's testing tools and methods. In a commercial sector, that your AI experts feel that it's, and I've had many discussions. I visited with 19 different companies in the last 3 months, big and small, and to a company, most of them will all tell you that if I spend a lot of time testing my technologies, I'm running a business risk. I'm slowing time to market, and my only measure really is sales. And so if it's sales, it's good enough. In the military, it's not really acceptable. I'm a one organization purchaser of a lot of technologies, and I have to understand how they're going to fail in conditions of national security. And so testing tools and methods are things that we think that the military is well postured to help encourage technology development in, because the commercial sector will likely not do it well without us. Fifth barrier is integration. It's really easy to talk about the wonderfulness of AI implementations when you control the streamline of data, you control your development environments, you control your production environments, you control all those aspects, and those are when you look at Google and Amazon and Microsoft, they typically do. In the military, we'll have a lot of systems that are owned by a lot of different vendors. They're maintained by different people. They have soda straw pipes between where their data is collected and where we might analyze or run some AI algorithm against it. And even if you're doing edge testing, the model maintenance is a difficult challenge through that soda straw. So integration becomes a very large challenge that we actually haven't seen any evidence of it being done well in military settings. And then a sixth barrier, as I just alluded to, is model maintenance. Testing AI implementations in a controlled test environment are insufficient if the model is allowed to adapt while in production. And so we have to be able to develop ways of testing the performance envelope of these AI implementations once they're in production, and then monitoring them and curating those models over time as well. The last, I said 6+1. The last one, it's sort of implied by all of them, is what I consider a stretch system of experts in the nation. There's a lot of folks that look like each of you that are needed to accelerate the delivery of AI, and there's just not enough of us in the nation. And so, what the Defense Department recognizes is the role of the Defense Department in encouraging growth of the innovation base. The innovation districts such as Silicon Valley and Boston and Austin grew because of sustained Defense Department investment. And I will consider it a personal failure, although I won't be in the Jake long enough to necessarily see it or not, is if in 10, 15 years, if we haven't created new innovation districts with the initiative called the Jake, then we will likely have missed the boat. Incrementally adding to Silicon Valley cost of living will not make our nation competitive, and it won't satisfy our commercial nor military needs. So I'll pause there. I appreciate your attention, and I'm welcoming questions after Weidi's comments.
Good afternoon. Thanks to Athletic Council and Catherine to invite me to such a good conference so I can learn from everyone. But I have to say, I'm the only one in the panel don't have a technical background. So I was a military officer for 40 years. So I have to say, from in a military officer's view, I got 3 points. First, there are the bright opportunities from this around the development of AI. Just now, Frederick mentioned about the 60 years of AI. Yes, as I remember, in the early 1980s, there was a hot wave of AI. Well, when I was a linguistic postgraduate in college, but that one turned cold quickly. Now we have seen a new round of AI hot based on cyber development. There are some breakthroughs from combination of cyber and AI in machine perception and recognition, in natural language processing, and in smart robots. They are producing technological and social progress, which we are witnessing. In military, they are producing better battle space awareness, improving operational efficiency, making ammunition more precise and faster combat rhythm. And the most important progress is reducing combat cost in human lives and money by using unmanned systems in large scale. This is a bright side of the AI and the cyber militarization. Secondly, I have also some concerns about dark sides of the military plus AI. It has a negative impact on international security, especially on strategic relations between big countries. Let me say it in detail. Number one, given the advantage of military AI, will those AI military powers be seduced to use military means more often and less self-restraint? If so, there would be more military conflict and more collateral damage on innocent people. We've seen such a dangerous tendency. Second, for today's big countries, they have important interests, both convergent and divergent. There are big difference from that of in the Cold War years. That's a big difference. And the big issue is how to develop the former and restrain the latter and maintain a strategic stability among them. For them, nuclear weapons and space access are extremely important and sensitive. Will the militarized AI plus cyber being used to reduce others' nuclear capabilities and deterrent efficiency? Will it be used to lower the threshold of the use of nuclear weapons? For them, a certain level of the strategic understanding and mutual trust is critical. To my humble understanding, today's AI is still a weak AI. Maybe on some area we can say near strong AI, but basically it's still a weak AI. So the weak AI, they are not good enough to deal with deception and may produce strategic misperception and misunderstanding. So that overused AI plus cyber may be easier to cause strategic crisis, even nuclear engagement between big powers. For me, the U.S. left of launch efforts did send a dangerous signal. Number three, as we know, cyber have a very low access threshold, and the AI produced costs tend to be reduced. That may render a quick technology proliferation. I mean, the proliferation of militarized AI and cyber. If a sensitive military AI or cyber technology and know-how gained by those irresponsible, radical, or terrorist non-government groups, what will happen as a result? How to prevent that from happening? That's a big question we should keep in mind, and as we push AI and cyber military use. My last point is on the limit of AI and cyber military application. AI plus cyber go military, I think it's unavoidable, but its military use must be limited. If a human don't do it, I think the God will do it. The military use of AI plus cyber should be put on the top of arms control table. In that, too many unanswered questions in front of us. Will that be a top-down pattern by international community or a bottom-up pattern by a big countries concerned? In view of history, there were strong arms control after big wars, World War I and World War II, and there are weak arms control or not so strong arms control by bargaining among the main players. What about the AI plus cyber arms control? It seems to be the latter. What exactly should be under control focus on weapons or focus on behavior. At the present, some topics are under discussion, such as lethal autonomous weapons with a limited consensus, but we should go forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you, panelists. You can see that if you talk about AI, everyone feel very optimistic, and you put cyber, and it's like war, right? It's just going downhill, and that's really the vertical that we see, right? Is that we're very optimistic, and then we realize there are a lot of risks in here. One area that I love to hear from Fred, because I think what you really like to hear is what are the latest development of AI ML application in cybersecurity, and also tell us more about adversarial machine learning, which is really a new area of cybersecurity that we really haven't really dealt with.
Yeah. So again, getting back to the point of the potential to increase the size of the attack surface, the more AI-enabled software that is out there, the more potential there is to hack it. And there just is not a lot of work at the intersection of AI and cyber. I think people recognize that it's a problem, but there honestly it hasn't been a lot of progress. There's basically three ways to attack a machine learning system. So there's something called adversarial inputs, and basically there's a really classic example of it that those of you who follow it. It's called the stop sign attack. So imagine you're an autonomous vehicle, and you've been trained to recognize this six-sided object that's red and it has the word stop in it, is your trigger to begin tapping on the brakes. So when this autonomous vehicle sees a stop sign, it's supposed to slow down and stop. Some researchers at the University of Washington basically went to Ace Hardware, bought some masking tape, and started kind of cleverly placing pieces of masking tape on the stop sign such that it would fool the detector into thinking it was a 45-mile-an-hour speed sign. So rather than slowing down when it saw the stop sign, the car, if it was going less than 45 miles an hour, would actually speed up. Again, it's because these neural networks are extremely complex. Most of the time they do a very good job, but you can basically perturb the image in some ways that would to a human look completely random, causes the detector to make a completely wrong judgment. And we're now to the point where we understand this. We don't have a lot of great solutions, but it is a fundamental problem with these kind of systems, that they can be systematically fooled, just like humans. They can be systematically fooled, and there are critical consequences of that. A second type of machine learning attack is known as data poisoning, and Stoney referenced the importance of data. To what extent, as these machine learning algorithms are being trained by lots and lots of data, if I alter the data training set, the training set on which the data on which the system is trained, will it cause the algorithms to sort of go off kilter? So it's really important, again, as Stoney points out, the procedure of making sure you're really careful about your data. And then there's a third kind of attack known as a model stealing attack, where essentially you sort of probe the machine learning system to sort of understand how it operates, and to the extent that you can understand how it operates, you can maybe come up with ways to foil it. So we're beginning to understand some of the vulnerabilities of these systems, but we're very early in the game. Again, AI has been around a long time, but in the past 10 years, the advances have been so stunning. The people who have developed these systems sort of haven't thought about cybersecurity. They thought a lot about artificial intelligence and machine learning, but now the importance of overlapping these two fields is critical.
And I want to add, right? Like a lot of time in our community, we talk about securing devices, data, users. We don't really consider, really securing training models that are laying everywhere. We don't consider securing the models themselves or store them, and we don't really consider the validation of the result from the models. And so as we move and deploy the system across the board, in a variety of industry, once they're deployed, you're not going to be able to secure them. Or you just don't have the resource to do it. And so we are really in the beginning, right? This is like 1995, when of the internet, right? Like we kind of see it's coming. We know it will boom, but it's still early. AI is like that. But once you don't secure them, we won't be able to actually deal with it 10 years from now.
One other quick comment. So all these kinds of analogies are being made about the evolution of AI and the progress. There are some people who sort of liken where we are in AI today similar to alchemy. So pre-chemistry. So the alchemists did some pretty interesting things, but they also thought you could turn lead into gold. These machine learning techniques are just amazing jobs of engineering, but the fact is we do need more theory. We do need more understanding. People built bridges before they understood the quality of the materials as people walked across. So we're able to build these things, they work, but we don't understand them as well as we should. There's a whole topic of explainability. When an algorithm comes back with an answer about whether some splotch on my hand is a malignant tumor or a benign tumor, and let's say it says it's benign, I sure want to understand the reasoning behind the diagnosis that it's benign. Right now, it's really hard for us to sort of open up the black box and determine why did you come to the decision you came to. Again, these systems are very complex.
Yeah, and I want to go on to to refresh the discussion regarding the risk, right? We heard the different type of risks. There's ethical risks, there's some legal, there's some technical. But the one key question that I have is, what are the most significant risks that your government are considering, as you implement your AI strategy? And I hope we can go down, the line to discuss, because we hear different type of risks. But what are the key ones that really pop out that you guys are working on? So, Omar.
Thank you very much. I think what's exciting about this panel is the fact that we get to share experiences and learn from each other, and at the same time, many things get covered even if one of us misses them. So thank you all for your input on that. I think there's a lot that's happening globally with regards to AI strategies. Many governments are actually announcing AI strategies. We announced ours in October 2017. But there isn't really much happening on the governance, on the regulatory side of things. And really, governments are not taking a proactive approach when it comes to understanding what possible risks can come because of AI and what should be done. Which, if you look at the long term, is something that is going to come back to bite us. Historically, with the development of any technology, the way that governance used to work is governments would see the impact, would really have a hands-off approach. When things would go wrong, then government would come in and over-govern. With AI, I think the challenge here is if we wait for something to go wrong, it might already be too late. And that's one of the challenges that we all need to look at. And as governments collectively, we need to address the elephant in the room, which is, we should not wait for things to go wrong. We need to act as soon as possible with this technology. So rather, be proactive rather than reactive, I would say. That's my first thing that I would suggest to all governments. The second is ignorance within government leadership. And, it's good to talk about this openly in a room with 100 government officials. If you ask about artificial intelligence, I would say less than a handful would understand what the technology is, the impact is. And unfortunately, most of them would take decisions about deploying AI, about using AI in their government agencies in a way that might impact the lives of citizens negatively. So we saw this as a big risk, not just from a cybersecurity context, but in a general context. Ignorance is a big issue. So, it's not about deploying AI for the sake of AI. Sometimes AI can be stupid, so it's not artificial intelligence, it's artificial stupidity. And it's good to understand if you actually need to deploy AI, because there are times where you do not need to deploy the technology, but you're just doing it because it's fancy and you seem cutting edge. So how we are addressing that is we're actually upskilling our government officials. We're increasing AI literacy within government. And we partnered with the University of Oxford to do a one-year program where we train the government officials to understand the code, to ask the right questions, to know the ethical concerns, to know the pros and the cons, and then to actually develop an AI algorithm that is deployed within their government agencies. 94 leaders graduated 3 days ago, so the program was concluded 3 days ago, and we have the second batch actually coming out. There's also the concern of AI being a very broad term. And the challenge here is these systems are not the same across different sectors. The capabilities of the systems are not the same across the different use cases. So I don't think that expert systems are the same as self-driving cars. They're not the same as smart agents that we have to develop or to deploy certain services. So we need to understand as well the capabilities of the machine and then the use cases and where the risks are to map out and then to be able to take a better approach and put a better plan. Explainability is something that was mentioned. I think it's extremely important. You cannot protect yourself if you don't understand why decisions being made. There was a very interesting Wall Street Journal article recently talking about a malware that goes into a smart CT scan machines that actually sometimes gives the machine false readings and makes people feel like, or gives the doctor a reading that people have certain diseases when they don't. And I think as these systems and these algorithms get developed, they will also be used for negative use cases, wherein they'll be able to penetrate certain systems, give certain readings. And if you cannot explain why a decision is being made, you will be fooled to think that you're getting the right reading and you take the wrong decision. So explainability is something that is extremely important. The sixth thing that I think is important is the fact of understanding facts from fiction. Where the value of actually deploying AI in government is important, and also understanding what are the implications beyond just economic implications of deploying the system. What are the social problems that are happening? And one interesting story, and I'm sorry for dwelling on this, but one interesting story that I heard a while back is a very interesting sharing economy platform from one of the countries in our region was collecting a lot of data. They were actually expanding aggressively. And the CEO said that one day they had a denial of service attack that attacked the system and stopped anyone from getting the service. Within hours, there were protests on the street because the whole country came to a standstill because it was a very, or the whole city at that time came to a standstill because of the importance of this platform. And the person who attacked the system, whether it was an algorithm or a person, understood where the pain points were. So the denial of service came first and foremost to the places where it was very necessary for people to actually get to their work. So we need to also address these issues. What certain applications or what certain algorithms know about us, what the impact of actually them being out of service or them being attacked would be, and how we can relate to that. And then finally, with regards to the trend that we've been seeing, Kevin Kelly famously said that the previous equation for success was energy plus X. This was the equation for success from the first to the third industrial revolution, which is, add electricity to anything and it'll become better. Today, because of how ubiquitous artificial intelligence is and how it can be implemented in every single sector, the new equation for success is intelligence plus X. You can add intelligence to anything and everything, and you can connect it and you can make it, something that provides a lot more value. The challenge there is if we do not enforce some sort of minimum bar for cybersecurity, minimum bar for collaboration when it comes to deploying these systems and working with these systems, the implications of them being hacked or penetrated are going to impact the real life. So, the moment you have a big scale cybersecurity attack on a country that is fully connected or fully run by artificial intelligence machines, the economic cost will be in the billions. I think the human cost as well at times can be also quite high if you're looking at certain industries that transport humans or actually take decisions, whether it's self-driving cars or flights or whatever. So we need to move fast, I would say, and there's a lot to be done, and we're already late. That's the gist of it. Thank you.
Let me just make just one quick comment, and I'll hand it off to Meeri. Artificial intelligence will exacerbate what's referred to as the computer science capacity crisis. Computer science is now the #1 major at lots of universities. Between the years of 2013 and 2016, the number of students becoming computer science majors has grown by over 100%. The number of faculty during that same time has grown by about 17%. So the classrooms in computer science are bulging. There just aren't enough faculty. We hear these amazing salaries that students are being offered. So if you have a brand new PhD in artificial intelligence, you could well get a mid-six-figure offer right out of school. If you're an experienced researcher and have some research credibility, you'll get a seven-figure offer, maybe $2 or $3 million salary offer, and university professors don't make anywhere near that amount. And so who's going to train the next generation? So this was Stoney's sort of +1 point, where a lot of students want to learn about computer science. They want to learn about artificial intelligence. There just aren't the faculty members around to train them.
Ben, I want to dovetail on a couple of comments from both Omar and Fred there today. And this is part of this is tied to the sort of ignorance of decision makers and users. And I think that our technologists have aggravated it with adopting terminology that misleads underinformed people. We use words like learning and perceiving when we really mean training coefficients, and we really mean signal processing. Those words mean something to people about the way people interact with the world, and they mean something completely different to an algorithm that's operating in a piece of software. And so this presents a significant barrier to understanding why it's doing what it's doing. And so one of the things that we're trying to infuse into our product delivery are these irreducible principles of systems engineering that aren't poorly understood by people that are rushing to a data science degree. They're demonstrated in multiple domains across, where we have system failures. Human factors engineers come in and recognize why things failed. And it's usually one or more of the following things have not been considered in the design of any technology, whether it's AI or not. Is the system observable? Is it directable? Does it direct the user's attention as appropriate? And is it operating in a way that's predictable? When we design technologies that don't adhere to those irreducible measures, features of systems engineering, you end up with untrustworthy technology. It's not that the people should trust the systems better. It's that the systems are not designed to be trustworthy. And so part of our gospel of testing tools and methods is to not only test accuracy and computational power, these computer science measures that are important for understanding improvements recognized from AI, but also looking at some of these human system interaction measures to understand how well the tools actually help people in the real world.
Yeah, and since we're running really short on time, so can we start with some Q&A, and if you can combine some of your answer and insight into that. I was told to have Q&A. Very good. Warned. Yeah, if there's no Q&A, I will have questions. Okay, thank you.
Hi, thanks very much for the panel. Grant Mizell, I'm a fellow over at Georgetown. We heard a little bit of it, but certainly there's a huge cultural span when talking about AI, and Colonel Trent, you brought it up very briefly, and I think we hear about it in a little bit of the ethics discussion. But the big thing is the culture between military use of AI that I really heard from down here and civilian use of AI and Project Maven. Right, not to go any further, could you address a little bit of the conflict of two worlds or the tension between the two worlds?
Sure. Do you want to start from maybe Fred or Omar's perspective, or maybe Meeri's perspective on, or do you want to start with the military?
I think Meeri,
Go.
you should, think, give us an insight here.
Yeah, maybe I start by there is in this discussion has been so many commonalities to the world. I'm not definitely expert in the military area. More working with the governmental organizations using AI in other sectors. But the key point that I was having in mind related to the main question to the key risks that we as a nation need to cope with is this is all related to the trust that our society and the people have for the government and for the public sector, for the private companies operating and using AI and I hear these similar themes raised from the military and the other sectors. So I think there are the same need for finding ways to secure the agency and keep people and the society in the pace of taking into use AI. So that's common for both of these areas. One thing related to that I wanted to bring up is really that I feel that in this space we discuss too little about what are the skills of the people to actually understand what is happening, how our society in future is operating, and have an opinion about this, to be able to figure out whether to trust the services in this space or not. And in that space, we have really good experiences of really pushing forward this kind of large-scale AI education that was raised by you as well. So 150,000 Finns have so far gone through the basic AI elements of AI education, and that's a good example about how we can basically raise the interest towards the people and the society and learning skills on being able to. I think that's sort of new civil society skills for the AI age. So that's something that we really need to put an effort on. But to this question, I think it's extremely important to focus on the industry specific, sector specific understanding about how do we cope with these problems. So at the moment our focus is heavily on finding the leaders from different sectors and start discussing together how do we what are the standards and common ways of working, common codes of conduct related to AI ethics in each of the sectors and sort of do it once for the whole sector, not so that everyone needs to come up with their own means of testing mechanisms and approaches to this. So,
yeah. I think if I can just add one point on the civilian use case, and I'm very interested to hear about the military use case as well. So I'll try to be quick on this. I think when you look at governments globally, even the most efficient governments actually spend 80% of their budgets on operational expenses and less than 20% on actually investing into enhancing government or enhancing the infrastructure. The challenge you have there is government as a machine is actually quite slow and it's quite big. Artificial intelligence brings the possibility of actually increasing efficiency and savings, and then using these savings to make your government better and to operate more like the private sector. And also to bring up the quality of service, because you are able to tailor services or actually extract data that allow you to provide better services. So what we've done, for example, in the UAE, just quickly, is we've deployed AI in healthcare to diagnose tuberculosis. We have 200 nationalities in the UAE, people come in with different diseases. It's important for us to make sure that process is very quick, it's very efficient. So we have an AI assistant with the doctors that are able to diagnose tuberculosis quite quickly. We also deployed AI in infrastructure development, and we're seeing between 20% to 40% savings in infrastructure deployment and development in the UAE just from that solution. Now, the interesting part of that is you're able to use these savings to reskill and retool people. You're also able to use them to improve the quality of services within government. And what people care about the most is value, first and foremost, because most people say they care about privacy. And my counter argument is we've seen the data breaches that Facebook has had over the last couple of years, and people still log on to Facebook. It's because the value that it creates for them is much higher than the payoff, which is the data payoff that is given. So I think if you are giving them a value for their money or for their data, they'll be more than happy to do that. And then second, and which is very important as well, is the privacy component, the trust component in government, which is also quite important. So from a civilian side, I think deployment of AI is going to be slow in certain aspects. It's going to be fast in others. So in certain aspects where the shortcomings are much lower than the actual pros of deploying the technology, we're going to see much faster deployment. And I think you're going to see different countries excel in different things. So China, for example, is excelling in certain domains more than any other country on earth. And that is going to give it an advantage. The US is, what they're doing in defense and what they're actually aspiring to do is going to make them a lot more advanced than countries like the UAE. We are focusing on government service delivery. So I think in the long run, within the civilian realm, there's going to be centers of excellence when it comes to AI deployment within government. And each country can teach something to the other, which I think is going to be useful.
Yeah, these are excellent comments. I don't have anything to disagree with any of them. First off, is we fully recognize commercial investments far outscale military investments. This hasn't been the case in most previous technology efforts. And so it's very important for the military to be able to, again, be a part of that technology sector. If we think that the only part of the technology sector that's going to be responsive to our needs is the one part that we're directly funding, then I think we'll lose out on an ability to capitalize on national as well as international investments. The military applications I mentioned, the JAIC is responsible for accelerating AI delivery across all of our warfighting functions. So you can imagine delivering the lethal fires is critical aspect, not really commercially necessary. But also a lot of areas have a great overlap with commercial needs, and we anticipate immediate benefit to civilian populations. Information operations, identifying fake personas, adversarial personas in social media, support to planning such as logistics operations, movement of healthcare supplies and humanitarian assistance operations. Healthcare, issues with anything from analyzing, imagery to analyzing healthcare records to monitoring, wearable devices. We also are, spending up efforts to improve electronic warfare and the management of electromagnetic spectrum. So electronic warfare hopefully is not a commercial use, but EM spectrum management is hugely important, especially with the emergence of 5G networks. So on the military side, though, I believe that we will always contrast with commercial investments because we're not profit driven. This will allow us to sustain investment where commercial venture capitalists may start to get weak in the knees. We know that it may be important to invest for the long term. We also, I believe that, at least in my military career, I've received a lot of feedback personally, as well as broad spread in the news that the military, at least in the United States, is trusted for its principles and ethics. In some cases, maybe even more than some commercial companies these days that are in the news. And so this gives us an advantage right now that we need to not lose. We have to be open and forthright in the advocacy and implementation of principles and ethics. And we believe this is central to the Defense Department's way ahead. So I see there's a lot of overlaps from humanitarian assistance to financial management, autonomous vehicles. I mentioned EM spectrum management and cyber. So there's going to be a heavy overlap of a lot of the things that we do, and so it's how do we create the dialogue that ensures that the technology that matures in the commercial sector also benefits the taxpayers when it's needed in times of war.
Just now, I talked a lot on AI's military use, but actually, I think in China, we basically look at AI as a basic tool. It could be used in military or it could be used in civilian, in commercial, just like two sides of the coin. And as I know, Chinese government is more push forward for civil use. For example, in LOT, and in recent years, I think every Chinese witnessed a big progress in that aspect. And also, in that area, there's another two sides. AI could be used in the right direction, got more benefit to the people, social progress, and if you're not cautiously used, could be, say, misuse, could be a damage to everyone. So in that sense, I would say Chinese government is very cautious when developing, push forward for AI development and AI use. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sean Canuck. I teach a graduate course on the security implications of AI here at George Washington. I want to thank the panel for a wonderful discussion so far. I think it's been really substantive. Love the categorization of the technical attacks or vulnerabilities against AI machine learning algorithms. And we've mentioned a little bit about the human-machine interface, but I'd love to hear the panelists' thoughts, if any, on the AI developments that are being specifically tailored to target that human oversight or human in the loop involvement in AI algorithms, whether it's for improving cyber attacks, better criminal activities, or in the military context at that strategic level of impairing the command and control of your adversary. So AI designed specifically to target and impair the humans who are charged with overseeing the vulnerabilities of those algorithms.
I can offer one example. So about 2.5 years ago, MIT released something called AI 2, and it was specifically with your thought in mind. And so there was sort of this loop where the machines would analyze lots and lots of, let's say, log data. And then it would basically, in what's referred to as unsupervised learning, so the data was not tagged. It then came up with some observations about anomalous behavior. It then brought that anomalous behavior to an expert, and the expert said, yeah, some percentage of those really are anomalous. The rest of them are sort of false alarms or something. And then it received input from the human, and then it did it again, analyzed a bunch of data, came back. So there was this sort of circular loop. Over the course of several years, the accuracy of the system was something like 85%. It was able to correctly predict an attack about 85% of the time. Now, it wasn't perfect, obviously, but it was exactly that idea that the machine by itself probably wasn't giving enough. It would just identify a bunch of false alarms, but once you had the human in the loop, and it was this sort of constant iterative feedback, you found performance over time going up a lot. To me, that's a pretty interesting approach. Go ahead.
I think the tuberculosis example that we've deployed in the UAE specifically requires a human to be in the loop, just because these systems today do have certain vulnerabilities or do have certain flaws. There are chances for false positives when it comes to predictions. So having a human in the loop, at least for the short term there, is important for us. But another example of having a human in the loop, I think, in the get-go, and then maybe removing that human if the system is trained well enough. We have had a government complaint and feedback portal that was created that is enabled by artificial intelligence. And the idea is that when a complaint is logged in this platform then sends a message to leadership in certain government agencies saying that these are the issues that most people are talking about. The challenge in the beginning is some issues are actually across government entities. So there are 2 entities or 3 entities that are involved within this service delivery. And having the algorithm there doing the job itself caused a lot of issues wherein there was a lot of backlogs and a lot of sending the information to the wrong person. Having a human there was able to correct that and fix that. And I think slowly we're trying to remove the human to see, the feedback loop that the system actually provides to itself and the actual impact of the technology. So from a civilian use case, there are ways for us to actually ensure that there's a human in the loop. I think from a military use case, it would be interesting for us to hear, whether that is applicable or not.
So I'm wearing a uniform. I guess I can answer some of that. I think the question, looking at are there any instances of AI targeted against users? My bottom line is I'm not aware of any operational capabilities that have been deployed by the U.S. or its adversaries at this point. But I am aware of a lot of research going on in this space, and because it's really just so, frankly, it's easier to develop counter AI than it is to develop good AI. So I think that there is we're entering into an anti-armor paradigm with AI, and for the Joint AI Center. We look at it as just like cybersecurity. It's critical for us to understand the ways that our AI implementations can be undermined, and so that we can make ours more secure, more reliable. So we'll actually standing up within the JAIC, a red team activity that will not only look at cybersecurity vulnerabilities, but also inspect the reliability of the AI implementation itself as well. I don't, like I said, I don't think that things have been matured to the state of readiness, of military readiness yet. But I don't think that it's very far away.
All right, guys. So with that, you have the experimentation.
Just a quick follow-up.
Okay. All right. Quick.
I'm in Primer, and I'm with Nobles and University of California, Berkeley. To Sean's points, the question is, Omar, thanks for being here, and to the Colonel. If we are putting human in the loop, and yet still, to Fred's point, because we don't still understand the complexity, so whatever the human is doing, without the human understanding, and us who develop the algorithm without, not understanding the implications. So the human in the loop, are we still fooling ourselves? Because in reality, we haven't had a better understanding of the systems themselves.
I could comment quickly from this perspective. There's a lot of work. For example, I'm involved in the ICCE activity on like ethics certifications, and like this whole transparency is one of the key themes over there, and there we are like definitely striving for like together like defining the best practice, the requirements, like what is the transparency we as people like need to have for these systems, and like how do you come up with that transparency, and that is essentially for the purpose that like humans, whether they are like the ones in the organization responsible for these systems and the risk related to those, or the users of the systems, or external auditors or certifiers, like business partners. Like there are lots of humans who need to be in the loop, and like we need to have a good common understanding what is the transparency we need to establish in order people to be able to understand how these systems work. And like the next step, obviously, like when we have that understanding about the requirements, what is needed, what is the best practice for the transparency is like how do we actually monitor, like how do we effectively collect all the necessary data for that and draw the like in real time the conclusions about like how do the system, like whether those systems work in a way that we expect them to work, or like have they changed in a way that it's essential for the humans who are responsible of the systems to take an act on that. So
remember, this is a initial conversation about the issue, right? And as you heard, this is a lot of problems that we really need to deal with, and hopefully we can talk more and more and debate more about it. For this year and next year, we won't have time to discuss everything that we have for you, but I just want to thank you, the panelists, and please give an applause for our panelists today. They're here to answer some of your questions, but I was told that I have to tell you that the next session will be held back at the auditorium at 2:30 with Chris Krebs. So thank you so much. We're here. Thank you for your time.